Season 1 of The Flash opens with the Scientific and Technological Advanced Research Laboratories, or STAR Labs, creating a particle accelerator that would theoretically bring clean energy to Central City. Unfortunately, the accelerator explodes, causing a storm that gives superpowers to every human caught in its wake. One of those new metahumans is forensic crime scene assistant Barry Allen, who wakes up from a coma after 9 months having gained super speed. Barry is trained by STAR Labs' team, including paraplegic founder Dr. Harrison Wells, and his assistants Caitlin Snow and Cisco Ramon. After Cisco develops a suit for Barry that can withstand his high running speeds, the new superhero names himself the Flash. With a name, a suit, and a team supporting him, Barry vows to help STAR Labs capture all of the metahumans who are using their newfound powers for villainy. As Barry thwarts a series of metahuman villains as the Flash, he also has to juggle a complicated personal life. Barry was adopted and raised by Central City Police Detective Joe West after Barry's father Henry was convicted of murdering Barry's mother Nora. Barry had witnessed his mother's murder as a small child, but no one believed him that the death was caused by a fellow speedster wearing a yellow suit. Now with the powers of the Flash, Barry has a renewed hope in bringing his mother's true killer to justice and exonerating his father. As Barry continues to work alongside his surrogate father Joe to catch his mother's killer, dubbed the Reverse Flash, Barry also harbors a secret lifelong crush on Joe's daughter Iris. Iris meanwhile begins a romance with Joe's detective partner Eddie Thawne. Some of the many villains Barry must fight against in Season 1 include Leonard Snart and Mick Rory, aka the freeze and heat ray toting duo of Captain Cold and Heatwave, the weather controlling weather wizard, the rage-inducing Rainbow Raider, a super intelligent gorilla named Grodd, and even Caitlin Snow's fiancé Ronnie Raymond. Ronnie was thought to have died in the particle accelerator explosion, but had actually physically merged with a physicist named Martin Stein, losing his memories and becoming the metahuman Firestorm. Caitlin and the members of STAR Labs help Ronnie and Stein learn to separate their bodies and control their powers. Despite their brief romantic reunion, Ronnie is forced to leave Caitlin as he and Stein depart Central City to learn more about their powers. Barry also meets and befriends Oliver Queen, a fellow superhero from the neighboring Star City who goes by the alter ego Green Arrow. Though having no metahuman powers, Oliver is a skilled fighter and leader who teaches Barry how to be a superhero. As Joe helps Barry in investigating Nora Allen's death, the detective eventually begins to suspect that Harrison Wells might actually be involved. It's revealed that Wells is in fact a metahuman from the future named Eobard Thawne, a descendant of Iris's boyfriend Eddie. Eobard was the villainous Reverse Flash, who used his speed powers to travel back in time to kill his archenemy Barry Allen. When his plan failed, Eobard instead killed Barry's mother Nora. Unfortunately for Eobard, traveling back in time weakened his powers, stranding him in the past. Eobard then killed the real Dr. Harrison Wells and stole his identity, then set about to use STAR Labs to create the particle accelerator, cause the explosion that gives Barry his powers, and then steal those powers to have the energy required to return to his home in the future. After uncovering this revelation, Joe and Barry team up with Caitlin and Cisco to trap Thawne and bring him to justice. Firestorm and Oliver then return to Central City to help Barry defeat the villainous Thawne. Seemingly safe, Ronnie and Caitlin finally get married. Unfortunately, the imprisoned Thawne convinces Barry to help him create a wormhole that would allow Thawne to return to his home in the future, and Barry to travel to the past to save his mother. Barry accepts the offer, but while in the past, Barry realizes that he must allow his mother to die in order to become the superhero Flash in the future. Barry returns to the present and confronts Thawne, leading to a final fight between the Flash and Reverse Flash. Reverse Flash gets the upper hand, but before Thawne can kill Barry, Eddie shoots himself, meaning his descendant Eobard vanishes from existence. As the season comes to a close, the wormhole created by Barry and Thawne becomes unstable, turning into a singularity that could destroy all of Central City. In an effort to save the city, Barry runs into the singularity, leaving his fate unknown. In Season 2 of The Flash, it's revealed that Firestorm helps Barry destroy the Singularity, but Ronnie is killed in the process. 6 months later, a taped confession from the now-dead Eobard Thawne is made public, which exonerates Henry Allen of his wife's murder. Barry then begins being hunted by other metahumans, who all claim to be sent by a mysterious villain known as Zoom. A man named Jay Garrick arrives at Star Labs, introducing himself as the Flash from a parallel Earth known as Earth 2, pulled into this multiverse by the Singularity while fighting his greatest villain, the demonic speedster Zoom. The Singularity has stripped Jay of his speedster powers, but the alternate reality Flash is still able to train Barry and teach him new powers and moves, including throwing bolts of lightning. During his time with Team Flash, Jay develops a romance with the grieving Caitlin. As Barry and the Star Labs team fight off Zoom's army of metahumans from Earth 2, Joe forms a new metahuman task force for the Central City Police Department. Also joining the task force is police officer Patty Spivot, whom Barry begins a relationship with. The opening of the Singularity causes many more ripple effects for the team at Star Labs. Cisco develops metahuman abilities of his own. Taking on the name Vibe, Cisco is able to locate metahumans and even travel freely throughout the multiverse. The real Dr. Harrison Wells from Earth 2 arrives, explaining that he was responsible for the accidental creation of Zoom and the other metahumans from his timeline, and so he traveled to Earth 1 to right his wrongs and help Team Flash defeat the villains. Despite still reeling from the betrayal of the original Wells, Cisco grows close to this alternate version, nicknaming him Harry and forming a strong friendship. When Cisco discovers that Zoom has kidnapped Harry's daughter Jessie, the team travels to Earth 2 to save her. On Earth 2, Barry meets the alternate version of himself, who is married to Iris, and the team must face off against villainous versions of Cisco, Caitlin, and Ronnie, who go by the names Reverb, Killer Frost, and Deathstorm. Ultimately, the team are successful in rescuing Jessie, but upon their return to Earth 1, Zoom manages to pull Jay back to their homeworld, seemingly killing him. Meanwhile, Joe's long-estranged wife Francine returns to town to inform Joe and Iris that she is dying of a terminal illness. Francine's dying wish is to introduce Joe to his secret son, Wally West. Wally's introduction to the West family starts off shaky, but he quickly becomes a valuable member of not only the West family, but of Team Flash. After discovering that Barry is secretly the Flash but never told her, Patty breaks up with Barry and leaves Central City for good. Meanwhile, Caitlin grows cold over the supposed death of another lover, leading Cisco to fear that his friend will turn into her villainous Earth 2 counterpart, Killer Frost. The team eventually discover that not only is Jay Garrick alive and well, but his real name is Hunter Zolomon, and he was in fact the villainous Zoom. Zolomon was a serial killer who gained super speed from the particle accelerator explosion, but tried to increase his speed by taking a drug known as Velocity. As the drug started to kill him, Zolomon captured the real Jay Garrick of Earth 2 and imprisoned him to drain his powers and keep himself alive. When that wasn't enough, Zolomon set his sights on Barry in Earth 1. Now Zolomon captures Wally, trading his life for Barry's speed. In order for Barry to regain his powers, Harry recreates the particle accelerator explosion. During the explosion, Wally and Jessie are also caught in the blast, though its effects on them are unknown. Zolomon then murders Henry Allen, provoking the newly repowered Barry to a race to determine which of them was truly faster. Barry, distraught and angered over his father's death, agrees to the race despite the warnings of his team that the race was a trick to use Barry's speed to destroy every other planet in the multiverse. Barry ultimately succeeds in beating Zolomon and thwarting his plans. Time Wraiths, whose purpose are to keep order in the timeline and multiverse, capture Zolomon for his crimes. Barry rescues the real Jay Garrick, who turns out to be Earth 2's doppelganger of Henry Allen. With the multiverse saved, Harry, Jessie, and Jay say goodbye to their new friends and return to Earth 2. Barry, still distraught over everything he has lost, travels back in time and stops Eobard Thawne from killing his mother. In Season 3 of The Flash, after successfully saving his mother, Barry returns to his present with Eobard Thawne as his prisoner. Despite Henry and Nora still being alive, Barry realizes this new version of the future, which Thawne nicknames Flashpoint, is much worse for all his family and friends. This prompts Barry to allow Thawne to return to the past and kill Nora, resetting the timeline. Thawne is then imprisoned in his future timeline, and things seem to finally start going well for Barry, who begins dating his childhood crush, Iris. A mysterious villain known as Alchemy begins creating metahumans that only existed in Flashpoint, giving them their memories from the alternate timeline and sending them to face off against the Flash. Meanwhile, Harry and Jesse return from Earth 2, with Jesse being revealed to have also gained super speed from the particle accelerator explosion. As Barry trains Jesse in her new powers, Harry begins searching the various versions of Earth in the multiverse to find a new version of himself to join Team Flash and help in their fight against Alchemy. Ultimately, H.R. Wells of Earth-19 is selected as his replacement. After Jesse completes her training, she decides to stay on Earth-1 to pursue a relationship with Wally. After Harry returns to Earth-2, H.R. is discovered to be a fraud. Instead of being an actual genius scientist, he was more of an ideas man who had no actual scientific or technical skill. Despite this, Team Flash allows the well-meaning H.R. to stay. Meanwhile, Wally begins having visions of Flashpoint, where he also developed super speed and was known as Kid Flash. Feeling jealous that he didn't have powers in this timeline, Wally is persuaded to trust Alchemy, who gives him the speed powers he so desperately wants. Eventually, Barry discovers that Alchemy is actually his new CCPD partner Julian Albert, who is being mind-controlled by a villainous speed god known as Savitar. Savitar is seemingly impossible to defeat, being significantly faster and stronger than Barry. While trying to defeat Savitar, Barry is briefly thrown 5 months into the future, where he witnesses the speed god murdering Iris. In the present, Jay Garrick comforts Barry and assures him that the future can be changed. Barry and Iris get engaged, and all of Team Flash come together to devise a plan to change the future, save Iris's life, and defeat Savitar. At first, Barry and Iris decide to keep the future death a secret from Joe, who has happily started a new romance with a district attorney named Cecile. But eventually Joe learns of his daughter's supposed fate and joins the fight to save her. Meanwhile, Caitlin begins developing the cryokinetic powers that had turned her into the villainous Killer Frost on Earth 2. She finds comfort in a romantic relationship with Julian, who similarly struggles with being forced into a mind-controlled partnership with Savitar. As Caitlin's powers grow more out of control, she eventually turns into Killer Frost and joins Savitar. After realizing that Savitar knew impossible details about members of Team Flash, Barry deduces that Savitar was in fact a future version of himself. Savitar confirms this, explaining that he is the result of a future time loop. After Iris's future death at the hands of Savitar, Barry runs fast enough to create a time remnant of himself to defeat Savitar. But because this time remnant wasn't the real Barry, he is shunned by all his family and friends. Feeling distraught over his abandonment and purposelessness, the Time Remnant sets about becoming a god, which would force people to love and worship him. After obtaining his godlike powers, Savitar needed to return to the past and kill Iris in order to ensure that past Barry would create the Time Remnant and thus continue the loop and cause his existence. As the season comes to a close, it's the day of Iris's death. Barry and Savitar fight, but ultimately Savitar wins, defeating Barry and murdering Iris before escaping. As Barry mourns his love, he discovers that Iris was in fact a disguised HR, who sacrificed himself to prove his worth to the team. Barry then continues his fight against Savitar with Wally, Jay, and a remorseful Caitlin by his side. After Barry destroys Savitar's armor, Iris kills the villain, defeating the Speed God once and for all. As the season fades to black, an energy storm appears in Central City due to the Speed Force needing a prisoner to pay for the various crimes against the timeline. In an attempt to atone for his creation of Flashpoint, Barry enters the prison, his ultimate fate unknown. In Season 4 of The Flash, after 6 months of being trapped in the Speed Force, Cisco finally figures out a way to rescue Barry. Unfortunately, Barry's exit from the Speed Force releases dark matter particles that grant metahuman abilities to 12 passengers on a city bus. A mysterious man named Clifford DeVoe, known as the Thinker, begins manipulating the new metahumans into doing his bidding in a plot to defeat the Flash. One of the new metahumans is Ralph Dibny, who gains the ability to stretch his body and morph his appearance. Ralph is a former corrupt CCPD cop that Barry had gotten fired for planting evidence. Now Ralph is a private detective trying to better himself, Barry gives Ralph a second chance, leading him to join Team Flash and help them defeat the Thinker. Also helping Team Flash defeat the Thinker is Harry Wells, who returns from Earth 2 after an argument with Jesse. When Jesse breaks up with Wally, the Kid Flash departs Central City in an effort to find himself. Harry then forms a Council of Wells from various Earths in the multiverse, who bring their genius minds together to formulate a plan to defeat the Thinker. As the team battles against the new metahumans and grow closer to thwarting the Thinker's plans, there are many major life events to celebrate. Joe and Cecile find out they're expecting a baby, and during the pregnancy, Cecile begins to develop telepathic abilities. Meanwhile, during the epic crossover with the heroes Green Arrow, Supergirl, and the Legends of Tomorrow, Barry and Iris finally get married. Eventually, the team discovers that Clifford DeVoe, aka the Thinker, is a man dying of ALS. He had been given genius-level intellect after the particle accelerator explosion, dubbing himself the fastest mind in the world. Unfortunately, his ALS worsens, and DeVoe needs to stay connected to his specially designed chair to survive. The Thinker then transfers his consciousness into a metahuman named Dominic Lance, gaining his ability to read minds in the process. The Thinker then stages his original body to frame Barry for his murder. Although Barry is sentenced to life in prison, Ralph is able to use his morphing powers to appear as the original DeVoe and clear Barry's name. Meanwhile, the Thinker begins stealing the powers of the other bus metahumans, killing them in the process. This eventually leads him to Ralph, tragically killing him and stealing his powers, which allows the villain to morph into his original Clifford DeVoe body. The Thinker's ultimate plan is to create an enlightenment machine, which would diminish the intelligence of everyone on Earth, and DeVoe could teach them all how to live better lives. Originally seeing his plan as benevolent and for the greater good, the Thinker is slowly corrupted by the horrors he must commit to achieve his vision. This prompts DeVoe's wife Marlize to abandon him. Harry then tries to create a thinking cap device that would help him reach the Thinker's intelligence level, but the dark matter used causes brain damage and an increasingly deteriorating intelligence. As the season comes to a close, DeVoe activates his enlightenment machine. With time running out, Cecile uses her newly developing powers to send Barry into DeVoe's mind. While there, he finds and rescues Ralph, who returns to the real world and reclaims his body from DeVoe. DeVoe's mind is still alive due to his chair, but his wife Marlize destroys the chair, killing DeVoe for good. After DeVoe's Enlightenment Machine satellites are destroyed, the heroes celebrate their victory. Harry's brain damage is stabilized and he returns home to Earth 2, no longer a genius, but ready to live a normal life. Cecile gives birth to her and Joe's daughter, who they name Jenna. As the season fades to black, a new speedster from the future arrives, introducing herself as Nora, Barry and Iris's daughter from the future. In Season 5 of The Flash, Barry bonds with and trains his daughter Nora, who warns that she has no memory of him in the future, as he disappears in a crisis event in 2024. Meanwhile, a mysterious superpowered killer known as Cicada becomes hell-bent on exterminating all metahumans from Central City. Cicada wields a metatech dagger that could detect metahumans and negate their powers. To help in their mission to unmask and defeat Cicada, Team Flash recruits the multiverse's greatest detective, Harrison Sherlock Wells. While helping the team fight Cicada, Sherlock also becomes suspicious of Nora's true motivations. And Sherlock is right to be suspicious, as it's revealed that Nora is secretly working alongside Eobard Thawne, a time remnant from when Barry created Flashpoint. Team Flash eventually discovers that Cicada is a man named Orlin Dwyer. After his sister's death in a metahuman attack, Orlin adopted his young niece Grace. After Grace is put into a coma and he is critically injured in the wake of DeVoe's Enlightenment Machine destruction, Orlin becomes Cicada and vows to kill all metahumans as revenge. Caitlin and Cisco then start developing a metahuman cure, which Team Flash hopes to use on Cicada to stop his killing spree. When it's discovered that the comatose Grace has developed metahuman powers of her own, Barry convinces Orlin to end his vendetta against metahumans and take the cure, in the hopes of proving its viability and using the cure on Grace. Before Cicada can be cured, he is abducted by a new Cicada, who reveals herself to be an adult version of Grace. When Orlin tries to convince Grace to end their cycle of violence, she murders him. Meanwhile, Caitlin tracks down her father Thomas to learn more about her burgeoning ice powers and her villainous alter ego, Killer Frost. Thomas Snow had accidentally created the metahuman powers in himself and his daughter after searching for a cure for ALS. Now, Thomas's villainous alter ego Icicle wants to kill the human versions of them both by using a machine known as a cryoatomizer. Before Icicle can kill Thomas and Caitlin, Cicada 2 arrives and attacks them to steal the machine for herself. Thomas manages to take back control of his body and sacrifices himself to save Caitlin from Grace. With the cryoatomizer, Grace plans to reverse the metahuman cure into a weapon that would kill all metahumans. Sherlock then discovers that Nora has been working alongside Eobard Thawne and exposes her actions to the rest of Team Flash. Nora explains that in the future, with Barry missing, Iris had implanted a power dampening chip in their daughter that would suppress her speed powers in an attempt to protect her. When Nora is attacked by a speedster known as Godspeed, who kills her best friend Leah, the chip malfunctions and Nora discovers her powers. Furious at Iris for keeping her powers a secret, Nora turns to the only speedster she knows of for help, an imprisoned Eobard Thawne. Thawne, wanting to change his legacy to one a bit more heroic before he is executed for his crimes, trains Nora to defeat Godspeed and then travel back in time to meet her father. Upon hearing this explanation in the present, Barry remains furious at his future daughter and banishes her back to her time. Thawne then teaches Nora how to use the negative speed force to return to the past, where she teams back up with a remorseful and apologetic Barry and Iris to stop Grace once and for all. Although their original plan is to destroy Cicada's dagger, Ralph and Sherlock realize that the dagger is dampening Thawne's power in the future, which keeps him imprisoned. And so it was Thawne's plan all along to send Nora to the past to help destroy the dagger, which would ensure he regains his powers to escape execution. When Nora's new plan to enter the young Grace's mind and convince her to take the cure also fails, Barry is forced to destroy the dagger, creating a new timeline that releases Thawne from his imprisonment and erases the future Grace from existence. Also erased from existence is Nora, who gives an emotional goodbye to her parents. With the city and timeline saved once again, Sherlock returns to his Earth, Caitlin and her Frost persona agree to coexist, Cisco uses the metahuman cure on himself, Joe is promoted to captain of the CCPD, and the future crisis event that causes the disappearance of Barry Allen is moved from 2024 to the end of the current year. In Season 6 of The Flash, Barry learns from a multiversal being known as the Monitor that he must die in the upcoming crisis event in order to prevent the destruction of the entire multiverse. As Barry and Iris come to terms with this inevitability, the rest of Team Flash are resolved to figure out a way to save both Barry and the multiverse. A new Wells then arrives on Earth 1, adventurer Harrison Nash Wells, looking for a rare substance known as Eternium. Upon learning of the Flash's impending death, Nash reveals he knows how to save Barry's life, and thus begins tracking the mysterious Monitor. Meanwhile, a former colleague of Caitlin's, Dr. Ramsey Rosso, begins searching for a cure for HLH, a rare medical condition that killed his mother and was currently killing him. After testing a possible cure made of dark matter on himself, Rosso develops metahuman abilities which allow him to turn people into zombie-like creatures which he can control. With his new powers, Rosso, now known as the villainous Bloodwork, begins trying to obtain more dark matter to not only finally cure his HLH, but to obtain more power and turn the entire city into his zombie slaves. During a fight with Team Flash, Bloodwork gets the upper hand on Ralph and begins draining his blood. When Barry saves Ralph's life by giving him a blood transfusion, some of Rosso's blood enters Barry's bloodstream. With his metahuman powers, Rosso is able to infect Barry and learn all of his thoughts and memories, including his secret identity and his impending death. Promising to give Barry enough powers to survive the crisis and save the multiverse, Rosso fully infects and corrupts Barry's mind, drawing him to his villainous cause. As Bloodwork and the Flash attack Star Labs to use the particle accelerator to spread Rosso's blood throughout Central City, infecting all of its inhabitants, Barry's mind manages to fight back against Rosso's control. This helps Cisco and Iris devise a cure, releasing everyone including Barry from Bloodwork's mind control. Furious that his plan failed, Rosso turns himself into a blood monster to exact revenge on Barry. Ultimately, the Flash prevails, defeating Bloodwork and imprisoning him. With Bloodwork defeated, the members of Team Flash come together to say their goodbyes as the Crisis event finally arrives. Nash finally finds the Monitor's lair, where he hopes to learn from the being how to save Barry's life. Instead, Nash discovers that he has actually been tricked by the villainous Anti-Monitor, the Monitor's evil doppelganger. Mistakenly released from his prison, the Anti-Monitor releases powerful waves of antimatter and an army of shadow demons that begin destroying countless parallel worlds in the multiverse. As the Crisis on Infinite Earths begins, the Monitor's partner Harbinger forms a team of heroes to defeat the Anti-Monitor. Some of the assembled heroes include the Flash, Green Arrow, White Canary, the Atom, Batwoman, and Superman. A version of the Flash from Earth 90 sacrifices himself during the battle to save the multiverse, thus fulfilling the prophecy. Unfortunately, Anti-Monitor still defeats the heroes, forcing them to retreat to the vanishing point outside of time and space as the entire multiverse is destroyed. In a final battle against the Anti-Monitor, the heroes defeat the villain. Nash helps create a bomb that shrinks the Anti-Monitor and banishes him to the Microverse, while Oliver Queen sacrifices himself to restore the multiverse into a singular Earth, known as Earth Prime. Only the heroes who saved the universe have memories of the Crisis and their formerly separate worlds, but they all agree to work together to protect this new world and to honor Oliver Queen's memory. Following the Crisis, Team Flash attempts to move on in their new homeworld. The telepathic Cecile begins using her powers to legally represent wrongfully convicted metahumans. This leads her to helping a young metahuman named Allegra, who can control electromagnetic light. After being exonerated of her falsely accused crimes, Allegra joins Team Flash. Also joining Team Flash is Chester P. Runk, a scientist who specializes in tech, and Camilla Huang, a photographer who begins a romance with Cisco. Meanwhile, the various versions of Wells from throughout the multiverse all converge inside the mind of Nash. Things once again take a turn for the worse when Wally briefly returns to Central City, warning Barry that the Speed Force is dying, which would result in all speedsters losing their speed. While Barry tries to figure out how to save the Speed Force, the other members of Team Flash begin looking into the villainous Black Hole terrorist organization and its ties to the seemingly corrupt McCullough Technologies. McCullough Tech CEO Joseph Carver hires a team of metahuman assassins to thwart the investigation, and Iris is pulled into a mirror dimension where she finds Carver's long-lost wife, Eva McCullough. Although Eva teams up with Iris to find a way out of the mirror dimension, she is secretly plotting a villainous plan of her own. Furious that her husband Carver has been turning her tech into weapons for the Black Hole terrorist group, Eva begins trapping humans in the mirror dimension and replacing them with mirror versions that she can control. Eva creates mirror versions of Iris and Camilla to infiltrate Team Flash, and a mirror version of CCPD Chief Singh to infiltrate the authorities. Eventually, Eva escapes the mirror dimension to enact her final revenge, leaving behind Iris to find and save Camilla and Singh. In the real world, Eva convinces the Black Hole metahumans to betray Carver and align with her. As Team Flash grows closer to defeating Joseph Carver, Ralph meets and begins a relationship with a woman named Sue Dearborn, whose parents were being extorted by Black Hole. Sue then joins Team Flash in their fight against Eva's metahuman and mirror army. In a final battle at McCullough Tech, Barry and his allies fail at stopping Eva from murdering Carver and taking back full control of her company. Eva then frames Sue for Carver's murder, forcing her and Ralph to go on the run. As the season comes to a close, Team Flash vow to find a way to rescue everyone that was still trapped in the mirror dimension. In Season 7 of The Flash, the Council of Wells figure out a way to create an artificial speed force that would give Barry his powers back. Unfortunately, Nash has to sacrifice himself and all of the Wells in his head to power it. After Nash's death, the original Earth-1 Harrison Wells is brought back to life, theorizing that the universe will always need a Wells. Barry regains his powers but also gains speed thinking, allowing him to see every possible future outcome. This new power turns Barry cold and emotionless, prompting him to turn off the artificial speed force and lose his powers once again. Meanwhile, Eva discovers that she was in fact a mirror version of herself, and that her real body had actually died in the particle accelerator explosion. This inspires her to form a new villainous plan, creating a mirror army to replace everyone in Central City. When Barry finally rescues Iris from the mirror dimension, she helps him revive the Speed Force with the power of love. Barry then convinces Eva to surrender, and she helps destroy her own mirror army and release all of her captives before returning to the mirror dimension. With Central City saved, Harrison Wells uses his new universe-given time powers to live in a time loop of the 4 years he spent with the love of his life, who had been murdered by Eobard Thawne. Due to Eva's mirror gun, Caitlin and Killer Frost are finally separated into 2 different bodies. Killer Frost is then able to live her own life, eventually developing a romance with a reformed criminal known as Chillblaine, who uses nanotechnology to have Frost powers of his own. Unfortunately, Killer Frost becomes the target of Kristen Kramer, a government official who forms an anti-metahuman task force. Her new rules force CCPD to use bullets containing a metahuman cure, prompting Joe West to resign from the force. Eventually, Joe helps Kramer resolve her hatred for metahumans, and Kramer even discovers that she has secret metahuman powers of her own, which allow her to temporarily mimic the powers of nearby metahumans. After the revival of the Speed Force, which takes on the physical embodiment of Barry's mother Nora, Barry had also inadvertently created a Strength Force, controlled by a woman named Alexa Rivera, a Sage Force, controlled by a metahuman named Psyche, and a Still Force, controlled by a man named Dion Owens. The Speed Force believes that these other forces are unnatural and need to be destroyed, and so it plots to murder the Force hosts. Barry and Iris, accidentally creating these forces from their love, view them as family, and thus work together to save them. In a final battle with the Flash and his Force children against the Speed Force, Barry is able to convince the Speed Force to coexist with the other forces, prompting her to surrender and reconcile with the others. With Central City saved once again, Cisco decides to leave with his girlfriend Camilla to take a new job in Star City. Meanwhile, Barry and Iris, inspired by their Force children, decide to finally start their real family. This prompts their daughter Nora to return from the future alongside her speedster brother Bart. The West Allen family then team up with Jay Garrick to fight the future speedster Godspeed. Godspeed had developed his speedster powers by taking the Velocity drug, but wanted his powers to be real and permanent. And so he unleashes an army of Godspeed clones on Central City in an effort to force Barry into giving him his power. After Barry gives Godspeed true speed powers, the villain gets the upper hand. Before Godspeed can kill Barry, the Speed Force uses the negative Speed Force to resurrect Eobard Thawne. The Reverse Flash saves Barry's life and defeats Godspeed, before escaping with the promise of one day returning to defeat the Flash for good. In Season 8 of The Flash, a psychic alien known as Despero travels to the present from the year 2031 to kill Barry Allen. Despero explains that in the future, Barry will go crazy and cause an Armageddon event that destroys the Earth. As Barry tries to prove Despero wrong, he begins suffering from memory loss and realizing that major life events have begun to change. When traveling to 2031 to understand the cause of Armageddon, Barry discovers that the villainous Eobard Thawne has created the Reverse Flashpoint, in which he is the Flash and Barry is the Reverse Flash. In this new timeline, Eobard murders Joe, frames Barry for the villainous Reverse Flash crimes around Central City, and becomes engaged to Iris West. Barry then realizes that the speed required to travel back in time to erase the Reverse Flashpoint timeline is what causes Armageddon. Fortunately, with the power of Iris's love, Barry is able to run even faster than Armageddon, returning to the present and restoring the original timeline, with Joe still alive, Iris still his wife, and Eobard Thawne once again being erased from existence. Before Thawne is completely erased, Barry manages to drain him of his speed powers, sparing his life and sending him to prison. Following the erasure of the Reverse Flash point and averting Armageddon, Team Flash begins looking into a series of deaths by a metahuman dubbed Black Flame. Caitlin soon discovers that Black Flame is in fact the trapped soul of her long-dead husband, Ronnie Raymond. After freeing Ronnie from the Black Flame, Caitlin realizes that her husband had truly died while saving Central City from the Singularity all those years ago. And the being in front of her was an evil entity known as Deathstorm that feeds off of grief. Deathstorm then battles Team Flash, using his grief powers to create ghosts of Barry and his allies' pasts. Chillblain helps Killer Frost transform into the even more powerful Hellfrost, who is finally able to defeat Deathstorm by absorbing his grief, though at the cost of her own life. As Team Flash mourns Killer Frost, Caitlin and Chillblain team up to find a way to resurrect her. Barry then meets a new speedster known as Fast Track, who is actually a scientist named Mina Dewan. Mina had given herself speedster powers using a machine known as Block, which she had invented with a time remnant of the original Eobard Thawne, resurrected in this timeline by the Time Wraiths. Unlike the villainous Reverse Flash Thawne that wore Harrison Wells' face, this version of Thawne was actually a benevolent scientist who develops a romance with Mina and wants to better the world. Meanwhile, Iris becomes infected with a time sickness that begins to spread, creating negative versions of the Strength, Sage, and Still forces. The negative forces transform the good Eobard Thawne into the villainous Reverse Flash Thawne that resembles Harrison Wells, using him as their all-powerful avatar. Barry is then granted the powers of the positive forces, leading to an epic final battle between the Flash and Reverse Flash. Ultimately, Barry wins and the Reverse Flash is destroyed and permanently erased from existence. As Team Flash celebrates their victory, the negative forces search for a new avatar. Knowing a new threat was inevitable, Barry resolves to get ready for one final fight. In Season 9, the final season of The Flash, a new villainous speedster known as Red Death arrives in Central City and recruits an army of metahumans, known as the Rogues, to steal the components necessary to create a cosmic treadmill. As Barry and Team Flash face off against Red Death and their Rogues, Iris discovers that the villainous speedster is actually a version of Batwoman from an alternate timeline, banished to Earth Prime after being rejected by the Speed Force. Red Death wants to capture Barry Allen and steal his speed to power the cosmic treadmill and return to her own timeline. Meanwhile, Caitlin and Chillblain's efforts to resurrect Killer Frost accidentally create a new personality, neither a human nor metahuman, but a deity known as Keone. Angered and devastated by the loss of Frost and Caitlin, Chillblain joins the Rogues after being promised that they could help resurrect his love. Ultimately, Barry convinces Chillblain to betray the Rogues, and with some help from Earth Prime's Batwoman, Team Flash battle and defeat Red Death. Following Red Death's defeat, Chillblain develops a romance with Keone and helps train her in her newfound abilities. Chester and Allegra develop a romance of their own and decide to make their relationship official. Joe decides to retire and move to the countryside to safely raise his young daughter Jenna, though Cecile decides to remain in Central City for now to continue helping Team Flash. And in the biggest surprise of all, Iris discovers that she is pregnant, which she celebrates with Barry and the rest of Team Flash. At a surprise birthday party for Barry, Wally West returns and reveals that he has found a way to project his consciousness into alternate Earths from the reborn multiverse. Unfortunately, Ramsey Rosso then attacks the party, guilting Barry for all of the friends who have died helping the Flash, then possesses Wally and murders Barry. Using Wally's newfound multiverse abilities, Rosso begins to spread his bloodwork infection to infinite Earths. Barry then wakes up in Purgatory and is greeted by Oliver Queen, who now serves as the Spectre, protector of the multiverse. Oliver helps Barry come to terms with his guilt and resurrects him, then briefly joins him on Earth as the Green Arrow to defeat Rosso and save the multiverse. After Rosso is defeated, Oliver cures his HLH, then says a final goodbye to his friends before leaving to resume his role as the Spectre. 9 months later, as Iris is on the verge of giving birth to Nora, Barry is suddenly and randomly pulled into the past. to the day that the Reverse Flash murdered his mother. Barry then fights Eobard Thawne in the confrontation that led to Eobard murdering his mother. Barry accepts his mother's death in order to ensure his future as the Flash, and is then randomly transported away once again, this time to the year 2049. As Barry is pulled randomly through time, the Negative Speed Force begins using a mysterious cobalt crystal to possess Team Flash allies, like Joe West and Chillblaine, in order to create avatars to kill Barry Allen once and for all. Although Barry and Team Flash manage to save their friends and free them from the crystal's control, the Negative Speed Force soon finds its final avatar. Eddie Thawne is resurrected in the year 2049 and quickly discovers that his sacrifice years prior did very little to stop the villainy of his evil future descendant Eobard Thawne. Seeing that Barry has lived a happy life and married Iris, Eddie becomes corrupted by the Negative Speed Force, which gives him the power to face Barry Allen and end his legacy forever. Using the power of the crystal, Eddie becomes the powerful speedster Cobalt Blue, and uses the Negative Speed Force to bring back the Flash's most powerful adversaries, including the Reverse Flash, Zoom, Savitar, and Godspeed. The villains then travel back to the present, where they face off against Team Flash in a final battle. Eventually, Eddie retreats into the Negative Speed Force and absorbs the speed from all of his allies, making him even more powerful. While Jay Garrick suggests letting him overdose on the speed, putting an end to his villainy, Barry knows that in his heart, Eddie Thawne is a good man. And so Barry enters the Negative Speed Force and reasons with Eddie, forming a truce to have the Speed Force and Negative Speed Force work together to bring balance to the world. Following his victory, Barry rushes to the hospital to witness Iris finally give birth to their speedster daughter, Nora West Allen. The deity Khione transcends into a higher consciousness, allowing Caitlin Snow to return to her body. Joe West finally proposes to his longtime love Cecile, and as the series comes to a close, Barry unleashes a lightning bolt that gives speed powers to 3 new worthy people, expanding Team Flash and ensuring the world would always have heroes.